Welcome back everybody, thank you for joining me for another video. So the last video I released was 5 reasons why you might not want to have a dingo as a companion. That might seem like a very odd video to release because that's the exact situation I'm in right now, but I'm willing to tolerate those behavioral habits, those behavioral traits and quirks that I pointed out in that last video. Today I want to talk about one reason why you might want to consider having a dingo as a companion. Now, there are a few good things about dingoes that I'll get into in just a moment, but those good things could also be viewed as a negative, which I'll explain in a moment. But there is one reason why you might want to consider having a dingo as a companion, and I will explain that to you right now. And this is the reason why I ended up deciding to go with dingoes and having them in my home. Dingoes have it pretty rough out there. They're not protected by any laws or regulations, especially in Western Australia and New South Wales. In other states there are permit requirements like Victoria and in the Northern Territory, but in Western Australia and New South Wales there's no laws that protect them from people essentially, and you end up with a lot of dingoes that get bought by people because when they're puppies they're really cute, and then when they grow up people don't want them anymore, so they give them up because they're not prepared to deal with those things that I pointed out in the first video, and that was why I released that video first. So I think it's important to help out the sanctuaries like the Dingo Den in New South Wales and places like Safe Carnarvon here in Western Australia to rehome dingoes that need new homes. And hey, get out of the treat bag, you thief. Sit. Yes, that's what you need to do. So yeah, like there are dingoes that do need to be rehomed, and I'll tell you their stories in just a moment. But that was why I went with dingoes, because I felt like I was in a position where I could help rehome these animals that needed to be rehomed. I wasn't actually aspiring to be a dingo owner. I actually fell in love with Japanese Akitas. I lived in Japan for a few years. I got to know the breed while I was over there, and that was something I was looking at doing once my kids were at an age where they could help raise a family pet and help out with the chores and things like that. So my kids are at an age now where they understand the work that's involved and they can help us out. So I did want an Akita, but my wife is allergic to dogs, so that wasn't something I could do. And then I just started looking around at some other breeds, and I found out some really interesting information about dingoes, which I'll share with you in a moment. But yeah, it wasn't something I was aspiring to do, but you know, for different reasons they ended up in my care. And yeah, so I'm gonna get moving now with these guys. We're gonna go for a little adventure walk. I'm gonna let them exercise their brains by having a good old-fashioned sniff. Rusty here, his parents were shot by hunters, and he was taken from his den and sold to someone at a pub in Carnarvon for a couple of $100. And then about 6 months later they didn't want him anymore. He then bounced around from home to home, and he ended up with me. One of the homes would have been pretty good. They actually have experience looking after dingoes, but they had a female dingo and she didn't like Rusty that much. She kept on attacking him, and they couldn't keep him in that situation because he would have ended up getting hurt, so they had to give him back. But I know I've actually been in contact with that family, and they would have loved to have kept him. It was just impractical for them at the time. So Jalba here, he was actually found on the side of the road. He was starving, dehydrated, and severely injured. So his tail is actually missing. What happened, they believe a large goanna, kind of like a Parentes or something like that, managed to get hold of him, and it stripped a lot of the meat off his tail. That then became infected, and when he was found, the dingo family was nowhere to be seen around the vicinity. Now, I don't believe that family actually knew he was a dingo. They thought he was a dog, possibly, that had fallen off the back of a car or something and was wounded and left for dead, essentially, on the side of a road. So they picked him up, took him to the nearest vet, And then that vet decided that the best course of action was to amputate his tail, and that is why his tail is missing. He then went into a foster care program. He ended up in a foster care program. He needed to be rehomed, and he ended up with me. Way! Let's move on. I don't know if you can see that, but that is a wedge-tailed eagle. Look at that distinctive wedge on the back of its tail there. That is fantastic. I tell you, I see the best stuff when I take these guys for a walk. There's two of them. They're behind that tree now. Here they come, back around. Wow, that is amazing. I wish I had a better camera so I could kind of zoom in on them for you. I'm just using a GoPro at the moment. Two wedge-tailed eagles. Fantastic. They're turning into the sun now, so yeah, it's going to be, you definitely won't see them now. How cool is that? Thank you, boys, for bringing me on an adventure with you today. Oh, yep. And they've got me tied up again. Whenever I stand still to enjoy the scenery, enjoy the beautiful wildlife like these two eagles, they always wrap me up. It's a conspiracy, I tell you. They want to trip me over. Okay, so I might just take this opportunity to mention one of the positives about having a dingo while those eagles are flying around in the background. Dingoes don't trigger people's allergies. So if you're allergic to dogs and you have reactions when you're around dogs, dingoes won't do that, which is pretty cool. And that is actually one reason why we actually ended up picking them, because my wife is allergic to dogs and we were looking for a family pet, and ended up taking on two dingoes as companion animals for our family. So they are part of our family now, and yeah, we're just trying to look after them and give them a home. So hey, Rusty. So yeah, dingoes don't trigger people's allergies. All right, let's move on. So just before, when I saw those eagles, I mentioned to you that a positive about having a dingo around the home is that they won't trigger your allergies, but they do shed a lot of fur, so that is a negative. Nope. So while he takes a moment to roll around in the mud and get whatever disgusting smell is left in the ground there all over his body, if you feel you are able to help rescue an animal like this from a rescue center, they live for about 20 years in captivity. So that could be viewed as a positive, but it can certainly also be viewed as a negative because it is a long commitment. A lot of domestic dog breeds would probably die somewhere between 8 and 15 years, depending on the size of the animal. Larger dogs don't tend to live as long, but dingoes have very, very few health problems. So if you are being serious about having a dingo in your home and you want to try and help rescue an animal that needs to be rehomed, then you need to realize you're going to be making a commitment that's going to last for around 20 years. Is that fun? Is that fun? Look at you. You got black dirt all over your face. If you ever had ambitions to travel around the country, maybe to go caravanning, and you wanted to bring your four-legged friend along with you, you wouldn't be able to bring a dingo with you because you'd pass through states where it's illegal to have one. Now, I know from material that I've read that if you were to travel into South Australia with a dingo, they would be able to confiscate that on the spot and have it destroyed. And that's something you wouldn't want to have done. So they do live for a very long time. That could be viewed as a positive, but it's a lifetime commitment almost. So something else that might be viewed as a positive is that dingoes don't actually bark. So if you don't like the thought of having an animal in your home that's going to bark at everything that goes past the house, then that could be viewed as a positive. But it could also be a negative because that means they're not going to make very good guard dogs. One of the comments that I wanted to respond to, a lady by the name of Veronica left a comment saying there's only one reason why you shouldn't have a dingo as a companion, and that is because they are wild and they should be left in the wild. I 100% agree with you, but unfortunately the reality is, as I've just explained, Rusty was taken, he was essentially poached and sold to someone that didn't want him after a couple of months. And Jalba here, like I said, he was wounded and needed to be looked after once he had received medical attention. Now, my plea would be, if you ever find an animal like a dingo wounded in the wild, just leave it be. I know it might sound callous and brutal. I really love Jalba. He's adorable, and I have a lot of enjoyment spending time with him and Rusty. So, but it's just the natural cycle of life out there. The Australian outback is a harsh environment. The parentes that attacked him was, you know, just trying to find some life-sustaining energy to keep going himself. And I'm sure if Jalba had been left on that roadside, he probably would have passed away in all reality, and he would have ended up becoming a life-saving meal for another animal, maybe a wedge-tailed eagle, like the ones I showed you earlier in the video. Who knows, maybe he would have found a life-sustaining meal himself. Maybe the dingo pack that he was running with would have come back with some food. Maybe that would have given him the energy to carry on, and maybe he'd still be running around out in the bush today. So if you see an animal like a dingo out in the wild that's wounded or injured, just leave it where it is and let it be. I do have a video I'm going to post probably in about a week's time, and that is me taking these two beautiful young boys for an adventure walk up in the Perth Hills. Thank you so much to everybody who takes time out to watch my videos. I don't just make dingo videos. I have varied interests. I do snorkeling and scuba diving as well, and I like cars. A friend of mine took me out in his Mustang, which was great. So Intrepid World, it's about just getting out your front door and having new life experiences and having an adventure. So my channel is going to have lots of different content, so there should be something there for everybody. If you want to see more of these guys, please check out my Instagram, because I have videos and reels and photographs of these guys on my Instagram. So thanks again, thank you for joining me. I'll see you all next time.